Welcome to Why, Who, Where, the podcast that looks at success the way it should really be looked at. Join your host, Zubin Shroff, as he takes you through conversations with our guests.
My guest today is someone I've known since our boyhood days in Jaipur, India. The son of a celebrated Indian cricketer, DJ Chico never shared his father's passion for cricket. Instead, he found his true calling in music. His journey began 35 years ago during a trip to the UK where he discovered the world of DJs. Returning home, he started small, performing at local parties and eventually captivating larger audiences with his energy and beats. By the 90s, Chico had become a household name. But it was not until his victories in the All India War of the DJs in 2000 and 2001 that his fame skyrocketed. Hosting post-show parties for legends like the Rolling Stones and sharing stages with stars such as Tiesto and Avicii, Chico's career flourished. Today, he is an international DJ sensation, performing at prestigious events like the F1 and IPL. Chico divides his time between Auburndale, Florida and Bengaluru, India, playing at the iconic venues like the Omnia in Las Vegas and Live Miami. As a brand ambassador for V Moda headphones, Brunner, Voga Now and Kingfisher, DJ Chico continues to innovate and inspire. Join me in welcoming the maestro of the mix, DJ Chico. Chico, it is so wonderful to have you, and I'm really thankful that you could make the time. I know you've got a very busy schedule. You're going from one city to another. You were in Singapore a few weeks ago, and then I understand you were in Europe some time back, and then now back in Miami where you live. Thank you, and welcome to my podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure being here, and thank you for having me. Travel has been extensive, but this is something special, so I wasn't gonna miss it.
Well, it is special. It is very special for me. I've known you since you were a young boy. I'm in our hometown right now in Jaipur, where life started for both of us. Chiku, tell us a little bit about your life journey.
Well, life started for me in 1977. I was born in Bombay. Dad used to be in Bombay. That's where the parents met. Dad was originally from Rajasthan, so we eventually ended up back in Jaipur. I'm the only child of my parents, so spoilt in many ways. I started as a youngster who grew up in a household full of many celebrities, thanks to my dad, and also because, as I'm sure we'll get into it, my father being a cricketer, I grew up in a household which had every uncle was either an IPS officer or a minister or some form of influential person. So I did get away with a lot. I was always into a lot of sports as I was growing up. I was into cars, I was into bikes, basically what young boys are into. I hated education with a passion. Just it bored me. I just found education extremely unnecessary for me because the way I looked at it was if I'm learning about history, history is already past. So it's good to know basics, but do I really need an in-depth dive? At a very young age, I remember saying, stuff like calculus. When am I ever going to use this? So I always had some sort of clarity and I found it boring. But I was also very lucky that my parents were greatly into music. And because dad traveled and I traveled with him, I always had good music at home. I remember growing up to probably the latest music from around the world. Dad toured the West Indies, and so we'd have like all styles of music. I grew up from
He
everything
was a
from
big Bob Marley
Harry
fan.
Belafonte.
Was
He
it?
was a big Bob Marley fan. He was a big Jamaican music fan. He used to
Yes, he
love
was.
Jamaican music. Yeah, and we had everything from Harry Belafonte to Nat King Cole to Jamaican music in the house. So I grew up to a lot of music all the time. There was music always playing in the house. Besides that, I was into martial arts. I believe I was a fairly good cricketer, as I was told by my father. But as my father was my coach, that that didn't pan out too well because the pressures are different if you're always compared to your father, and
Of course.
and especially if your father is your coach, then the expectancy level of your performance, I guess, elevates in his mindset is greater than what he would expect somebody else to do. So cricket didn't pan out for me, even though I did play cricket a fair bit and I grew up around it. But I did take to martial arts eventually, and I did do fairly well in that. And yeah, so that's basically just the gist of my life.
And it hasn't turned out badly. Um,
It hasn't turned out badly.
I remember your dad was someone everyone looked up to in the state. I grew up in the same state. I played for that state. And he's someone we all looked up to. He was probably the most successful cricketer from the state to have represented India and whatnot. And I can imagine the pressure that must have been. At what stage did you really get serious about? I mean, did you go through times in life where you tried your hand at different things from a career standpoint, or did it become very clear early in life that being a DJ is what you wanted to do?
Well, DJing didn't exist when I started playing. DJing was a non-entity in India, leave alone a profession and not even a hobby, right? It was something that just didn't exist. Those doors opened for me mentally when I actually would travel to the UK with my parents and would understand that there's actually a culture out there that does this for a living, and there's a possibility in future of actually thinking about it. DJing was started off as the same way it starts for everybody. I guess it started off as a passion, just for the love of music. It's something I
As a
listen to
hobby,
pretty much.
maybe?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
started 15 hours a day. I was listening to music, and then it eventually became, oh, he's got new music. Why don't we're having a party at home? Let him play. That's how it started. I started DJing at a fairly young age. I started DJing almost when I was 12, and I started making
Wow.
money off DJing when I was 13. Yeah, so at
Is
13
that is
was
that
when I
when you
got
did
my
your
first
first gig
paid gig.
at
My first
13?
paid gig was when I was 13. Yeah, I remember I got paid by Jaipur Club. To It was pittance. It was like 10, 15 rupees, something like that. But they were like, he plays music, let him come, and we're having a party here, so let him play.
You
So,
remember what
so
you
that's
get
when
paid for your first gig, even if you don't remember the many gigs and what you got paid for them, right? That first one,
yeah.
it's not the amount, it's your first gig, and you remember the
Yeah, I
fee.
remember because I put it in an envelope and gave it to my mom, and I said, here's my first earnings. So I mean I remember that extremely clearly. But that's where it had to start. I remember my grandfather when he found out many years later that I was a DJ. The only question I was asked is, okay, if you're part of a band, and before I could complete that sentence, he said, "Chal, at least are you part of Gia band?" Because Gia band was a very big band which would play in weddings and so on and so forth. In Jaipur and especially in Rajasthan. So they were like, at least are you part of Gia band? At least have you accomplished that?
Yes, it was
So
the biggest name,
that was the
yes.
kind of question. It was, I mean, for sure, it was the go-to band for every festivity there was.
And the jokes that have been made on it. Um,
That's true.
who played a big part in your journey? You talked about your dad, your mom. Who were the other big mentors, influencers as you started to take off in this journey into a whole new world?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that my mentors were my parents because they gave me the freedom to do what I wanted to do. At that time, because it was not really a profession, there was no one to look up to and say, okay, I want to be like this person. They didn't exist. So I think my parents giving me the freedom to say, okay, uh, this is a non-existent profession, but if you believe this is a profession for you, then go pursue it. Um, I think at some point in time, my dad might have thought it's a phase. Okay, let him have his way, and then it'll kind of settle down, and he'll find what he wants to do. My mom was extremely supportive. My mom said, you know what, there is an industry out there. Just go for it, and we'll see what happens. So both my parents were extremely accommodating to me actually turning into this as a profession. And I think for that, they became my mentors. They became people that supported this entire journey when nobody else had belief that this, like the rest of the family, just did not have belief this was a profession or even a possibility of becoming a profession. Because in India in the early 90s, uh, DJing was not around.
Yeah, and I can understand. I guess a big part of it when family or society looks at something is around financial stability. And if that was not a big profession in India, did that ever worry you, or were you just focused on doing what you could do?
No, no, I don't think. So for me, anybody who knows me knows very clearly that I don't care about society. I don't care about pressures from the society, worries of family pressures, societal pressure. It just does not work on me, because I'm of the firm belief that it's good if society exists, and it's good that they are around, and um, they have a say, they believe, but nobody besides your family really looks after you, right? Like I would remember as a kid, a very early age, and I was told by family ki, don't do this, society's watching, don't do that, societies will think this. I would always ask them, why are you so concerned about society? Uh, I was sick last week, which of the society came to look after me? Or did society put this food on the table for us? Or last time I got hurt, was society there? Nobody is there. So why do we live under this societal pressure all the time ki you have to watch what you do because society cares? I don't care. I live my life. This is my life. I'll live it the way I want to live it. I live under the responsibilities and pressures that my family or my parents put under me, not under some unknown society who has nothing better to do and is basically sitting around and judging me based on what they believe I should be doing. So
Right.
that never really bothered me at all. Society is never ever. If I would have lived under the pressures of society, I don't think I would have been accomplished at all.
And as someone who knows you, I know 100% that is authentic where it's coming from. Um, which are the celebrities or DJs you looked up to growing up? I mean, who were the ones that was setting the standard for you, or did you just maybe not have role models, or did not have any icons, and just set your own bar?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, you can look at it either ways. Fortunately, I say India didn't have those pressures of having those bars, right? There weren't those big names of the music fraternity in terms of DJ music fraternity around in India in the 90s. So because they didn't exist, you weren't compared. Again, I'll go back into cricket for a second. Why did I not become a cricketer? Because I guess when there are role models that are available, you tend to be compared or want to achieve that standard of that role model, right? For me, cricket was never, I didn't have a role model. My father was an accomplished cricketer. But then if you look at the other side, who were my father's friends? Who were people I called uncle? Sunil Gavaskar was my uncle, right? Kapil Dev was uncle. Dilip Vensarkar was uncle. You don't you don't look at uncles the way the entire nation looks at uncles,
True.
right? So because they're part of your family, you think of them as your extended family. So to me, and I tell this story like when people ask me, till now, I mean, you've seen it, you've been around. uh, Sunil Gavaskar, I must have taken more than 10,000 autographs from Sunil Gavaskar for the rest of the world, but I don't still have a single autograph of his for myself because I never thought of it that way, right? To me, taking Sunil Gavaskar's autograph for me was just, he was just Sunny Uncle. And that was that. And so coming back to DJing, I really didn't have anybody to look up to because the industry was still growing. So that made life easier. I believe a lot of people fail in just having the pressure of having these mentors above them that they have to try and become. I think sometimes it's easier when you forget about the rest of the world and you just follow your own journey.
I do remember I used to go to England a lot to play cricket, and I think the radio jockeys were big, and of course they would do gigs as well, and there were a few famous ones then. Anyone in the UK or somewhere that you followed growing up?
Well, yes, yes, absolutely. And that's where I really started following how the industry worked. When I was studying there, I would see people like Judge Jules and Carl Cox, and these guys were at that time pioneering the market, and they would be on the radio a lot because I was too young to go to clubs, but you'd be able to hear what they were doing or see glimpses of them here and there. And that's what really started making it um, a profession, that okay, this is something that you can make serious money off and you can do as a serious business. This is no longer a hobby. This is now moved into a headspace where this can be a career.
And you've done some big gigs in India, from what I recollect. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, no life journey is, all upward, right? I mean, there are lots of lows. Um, what challenges did you have to face as you grew this career, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the first biggest hurdle we had at that point of time was the availability of music. And as a DJ, if you don't have the availability of music, that becomes your greatest challenge. We didn't have record stores that were producing house music or club music in India. They all were in the UK or in the US. We didn't have the gear available. We didn't have internet, or we had very, very basic internet with very basic companies that would give out music. So I think that was our greatest challenge to start with. How we overcame it was, I was very, very fortunate because again, dad had a lot of friends that traveled to the UK, or my aunt lives in the UK. So whenever somebody came down, you were basically begging and pleading them to just get you records. And any friends going, they would beg them to get records. Uh, Fortunately, I've been traveling to the UK since I was 2 years old. So I was very fortunate that I would at least do the UK almost every year, if not more. As you progressed and kind of got bigger and more connected, then you had friends who were pilots who would carry in 4 or 5 records with you for you, and they were traveling on a twice a week basis. So it became easier, but it was not easy in any form or manner. It was still a very tough industry. Of course, like any other profession, not every gig you've done has been, or not every day of work is perfect. You have bad days. Unfortunately, in bad days in the DJing industry, that can backfire on you a lot because uh, in the industry, I believe you're as good as your last gig, right? Nobody remembers what great you've done in the last 10 years, 5 years, 1 year. They remember what you did in your last event. There were days where equipment failed, or just everything I did went wrong. Uh, I could do things naturally and mix naturally, and then all of a sudden, um, I would land up in an event and start playing and found that every mix I was doing sounded like a train wreck. Uh, I mean, there were so many factors. Flights getting delayed. Flights was a later stage. Traveling by bus tire burst, and you land up at the gig an hour late, or an hour, 2 hours late, because you're just stuck on the highway. Those are all the kind of things that you faced, and it's part and parcel of learning the business. It's part and parcel of, I think, any profession. If you don't face the challenges, if everything is too easy, then I think somewhere down the line you believe that shortcuts are the way around, and it's really not.
So it sounds like, I keep saying this to people, you can either have one or two big challenges, or you can have 1,000 small challenges. And that's what it's sounding like, all the little things that can go wrong, they do go wrong. What's your mantra, if I may ask?
Um, I always try to make myself believe that everything is possible in life. People tell me this is hard to do or impossible. There's nothing impossible. I've learned that in my own journey in every field, professionally, personally. People are very quick to say, this is not possible. Um, everything is possible. You have to believe it's possible. That's the first step. If you believe something is possible, is the only way you'll make it possible. So I've been told you will never become a DJ. No problem. I've been told uh, I don't consider you a DJ. No problem. I've been told you're a terrible DJ. No problem. Now, either you can sit and cry about it. I believe in life there are only two options. I'm very black and white. There's no gray for me. In every part of my life, one option is you consider and you concede to failure and you sit around and do nothing about it and whine and mope about it. Or the second option is you get up and do something about it. So I choose the latter in most cases. I don't think in all cases, but at least in most cases, uh, I prefer to choose the option which says that you have to believe that it is possible and get up and do something about it. I think most people tend uh, to put their arms up and just say, okay, I'm defeated and I'll stay that way. And then I've seen so many people that have fought through what I believe to be a tough part of life for me. I've seen people go through far worse than that and succeed. So you're the only one who can alter your own perception. People will always try and pull you down and tell you what is not possible. But very few people will step up and say, but why are you quitting? This is possible to do. Don't stop, keep going. Fortunately, I had people around me that were like that in life and said, it's okay. It's just a knockdown. Get up and go back out and fight. What's the big deal? Um, you'll have to start 3 steps back. So be it. You start 10 steps back. So be it. And that kind of molded me into saying individually saying that yeah, okay, I got knocked down. I need to learn from this. What were the reasons this happened? How do I fix it? And how do we move on? There's no sense in crying about spilt milk. You go to the store and buy another bottle of milk and move on.
Buy another bottle of milk. Uh, what would you call the biggest setback that you've had? You just talked about where people put their hands up. By the way, you talked about black and white, and I'm loving the two pictures behind you. They're both black and white. Um,
Yes.
I'm very curious as to a lion and an elephant, and clearly there's something, knowing you, there's some thought process around that, which I'll come to later. But has there been a major setback? Like, was there ever a moment in life where you said, you know what, I'm done, or I'm not doing this again?
There have been multiple of those times in my life
Right.
where I put my hands up and shrugged it and said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Or this is just ridiculous. This I've reached my threshold, and uh, this was my last straw. I've done that on numerous things. If I wouldn't have done it, I wouldn't be human, I guess. So I have, but eventually when things come up, that normally is driven by emotions, and emotions in an emotional situation you tend to do that. It's what you think after the emotions have settled down is what kind of defines you as a human being. And I think for me, once I calm down out of that emotion, I go back to my black and white thinking and saying, okay, you know what? Let's analyze this a little bit. Let's take 10 minutes to analyze this or 20 minutes to analyze this. I won't waste my entire lifetime analyzing it. Uh, ho gaya to ho gaya, it's done, it's finished. Eventually, that's what it boils down to. Ki, it's one of those things. It's happened. Now what? Am I going to keep crying over it? Or am I going to actually get up and do something about it? And because I think so black and white, I eventually get up and do something about it. There are things that I did put my hands up on and I never went back to them. Like for me, cricket was one of those things. I tried. And I believe I was, as I was told by numerous people, I was fairly decent at it. But just the mental pressures of it were not worth the game for me. You know, uh, uh, And I explained this to my dad in a much later stage, and my dad was like, "You are a natural born cricketer. When you hold a bat, you can naturally bat. Uh, if you got serious, you'd probably play India." I said, "But I don't see the glamour in it, which the rest of the world sees. I don't see that super charm that exists for playing India. It doesn't exist for me." And I told him, I said, no matter what I do or how I play, I will always be compared to you. My father was probably respected one of the finest batsmen in India at one point in time of his career. I will always be compared. And now that I think back to it, I think that was a fairly wise decision because I've seen very, very, very rare cases of an actual well-renowned cricketer's son becoming a professional cricketer and achieving the status uh, that the father had,
which
right?
probably goes
I
for a
can throw
lot of
examples.
which probably goes for a
Yeah,
lot of
I mean
professionals.
Rohan Gavaskar, great cricketer. By if you take him out of the Gavaskar name, he's a fantastic cricketer. But he was always compared to Sunny
Very
Uncle,
true.
no matter
Very
what
true.
happened, right? You look at Arjun Tendulkar, he's probably a great cricketer, but your father is Sachin Tendulkar. No matter what you do, you're compared to Sachin Tendulkar. The man's a living legend. It's not fair to have that kind of pressure on a child who's in his own right is good, but that's the pressure he lives under.
Yep.
So, you know,
How much has innovation, you've obviously seen, how much it's been, what, 2 decades plus now that you've been DJing. I
three
guess I
decades
remember
plus, yeah.
walking to your room one day and with all the vinyl collection, and I guess now that is all onto your MacBook, and what have
Yes.
you. There's, I don't know how much vinyl or DJs carry now, but how much has innovation and technology? Where do you think it's taken your business, and what do you see as the future?
I think technology and innovation and the internet overall have grown the DJing industry, I would say a thousandfold. People might disagree with me, but I think a thousandfold because um, I remember when I started in Jaipur, I started on cassettes, and you would sit all night and you would kind of put markers on cassettes to remember where the track was, and then you take a pencil and rewind and forward that
Wow.
millisecond to start the track.
Wow.
That's where I started, yeah. Um,
I
but
did
and then I
not know
moved to
that.
vinyl, and
I always thought it was
yes,
vinyl. Cassettes and markers, that's
no, no.
like unbelievable.
Yeah, and you'd buy a new cassette and you'd break the top of the cassette. So by accident, if you ever pressed record, nothing recorded over your tape. And we learned that the hard way by doing recordings on top of that as well. But having said that, vinyls are the true art form of DJing, according to me. And if you can play on vinyl, I have a certain different respect for you because that's where that's where you start from, or you technically should be starting from. Um, but vinyls were a very, very heavy option. I remember traveling at the peak of my career, and I'd have 300 kilos of luggage with me on a flight. And
Wow.
in most cases, I mean, they were paying for you to travel with that much baggage because that's what was the requirement of the hour. I think now with digital technology, it's made things so much simpler. You can go to numerous sites and buy music. You have the availability of the music the minute it's launched. There are sites like Juno Records and Beatport and so many others where you know what's launched now. It's all laid out by genre, and then the availability of the charts. Before it was just the only thing that was known was the Billboard charts, and the Billboard charts were what made or didn't make a track.
Right.
So most of us would have had either the Billboard Top 100 CDs or cassettes, or you would have had the Now Top 50, or that series of cassettes which kind of told you what was happening. Technology wise, I think gear has got smaller. It's got lighter. The availability of the gear in every city is become immense. You can go out and buy gear. If your gear fails, you can go out and buy gear within the next 20 minutes, um, which in our case was never there. So
Wow.
technology is help, and now there's AI generation coming into this technology, and I think that's the evolution that's happening. I think it's also being an old school DJ, and I might be completely wrong with this, but just because I have old school thought process, I think it's there's too they're making it too easy, which is moving away from the art, and just now everybody can watch YouTube and become anybody can become a DJ because they can buy gear. They don't have the respect for a record anymore, right? You can go out to any store and buy records. So you don't respect the $8, $10, or £8, £10 that you spent on the record. It breaks. You're like, yeah, let it break, let it buy. I have
Hmm.
probably 14, 13, 14,000 records, and I still clean them, and I take my time to clean them. And
You
but that's
clean
the
them
respect I have.
13,
Yeah, I
fourteen
clean them.
thousand even now?
Yeah, yeah, I
Wow.
still clean them. I keep
That
them
must be
clean.
your
They
meditation or
still stay
something.
standing.
It's like
No,
when
it's
you.
a respect for all the hard work you've put into it. They deserve that
Fantastic.
respect.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So
Chiku, before I
so
come to
it
my. Sorry, you were saying something.
no, absolutely.
No, no, please.
No, I mean it's what made you money, right? It's your tool to make money. So why wouldn't you respect it? I still have my first turntables I ever bought. I will never sell them. They made me more money than any of this new technology would. So I have to respect them. I still service. I mean, mom, you know me. I've sat. Mom has walked into my room at 4 in the morning, and I still do it. And I disassemble all my gear. I'll be sitting with a screwdriver, all my gear disassembled, and I'll be servicing it in the middle of the night just because I felt that it had been too long. And that's the respect that they deserve.
Fantastic. It's incredible. In a day and age where we do not value uh, gear or belongings, or we just replace stuff, for you to look after what you do is just inspirational. I always leave a conversation with you being inspired. Um, Chico, before my last question usually is, what advice would you give to people, in any career, but generally in your kind of career where they want to aspire and become RJs, VJs, DJs? Before that, I want to know what's with the elephant and the lion.
I love the elephant and the lion. I do wildlife photography. I enjoy wildlife photography, but the only thing I like clicking pictures of are normally cats. I only click big cats, so I'll click tigers, lions, leopards, cheetahs. That's what I like. Besides that, if I like shooting any pictures, it's elephants. Uh, my mindset says that's the most powerful. He's the king of the jungle, right?
Yep.
Until you piss him off, then I think he's the king of the jungle
Do not
because
piss him off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't want to see a pissed off elephant. I don't think any lion, tiger, or any other known cat can take down a elephant when an elephant is pissed off. So most people have not seen an elephant pissed off. So you got to learn to respect both. He's calm 99% of the time, but don't piss off the calm. So there's a little bit of mind play happening
Very
on those.
nice.
That's why I
Very
love
nice.
these animals, and I love having them in the house. I got tigers, lions, and tigers in a couple of places. Yeah.
Wonderful. What would you say to people who aspire to be successful, maybe in any field, and especially your field of work?
So I don't know if I'm the right person to give aspirational advice, but I can definitely give advice that'll better your career. Be humble, be respectful. There are all these DJ rankings and ratings that happen. I always pull my name out of it, and I pull it out for a simple reason. And I've been asked this a few times in my life as to how come you're not in the rankings? Um, who is anybody to give me a ranking to start with, right? My only ranking comes from the audience that I play for. So if you're taking rankings from the audience that I played for, by all means, you can put me in a ranking. Number two, I believe a ranking gives you a certain different kind of fame because then you can go around saying, I am now a number one DJ or number two DJ or three DJ. But you became a number one, number two, number three DJ playing somebody else's music. So, so on what grounds
Very
are
good
you
point.
ranked?
Very,
Right?
very good
Uh,
point.
you became famous because of somebody else. So so be a little humble. It's okay. People tell me you're at a nightclub. They'll see me standing in a corner and they're like, "You're standing and watching a DJ who's 19 years old. Like, come on, you can do this in your sleep." Yes, I can do this in my sleep, but I can't do what he's doing in my sleep. there is something that I will learn from that 19-year-old before I leave the club, and I will spend time practicing it at home because I found that inspirational or I found that exceptional. So, music, the DJing industry is an education, which is a lifelong education. If people tell you that you know it all, I don't know. I don't know even. I probably in 33, 34 years of doing this now, I probably know 1% of this industry. And I think I still got a long way to learn. And most people who become arrogant will not want to learn because they believe they're already the best. I'm by far nowhere close to being
You're the other
good,
end of the spectrum.
forget best. I want to learn from everybody. So, like even youngsters who play with me, they're like, bhaiya, you've been around so long. What are we going to show you? And I'm like, no, I want you to play because I'm sure you'll show me something. And they're quite shocked by that because they always believe they have more to learn, which they probably in certain ways they do. And I'm happy that I can do something that they learn off and grow their skill set because of. But it also works the other way around. So that's my parting advice to everybody: be humble, be respectful, do your job, not for yourself, do your job for your audience. I go to play, my only goal is to make people happy. uh, I find my own happiness in it. For me, DJing is my zen, it's my peace. It's where I'm the calmest Chico there can be. People watch the waves and say, "Oh, this gives me so much peace." So people do
Absolutely.
yoga. This is my yoga and watching waves. This is my serenity. This is my happy place. So you start thinking of music like that. Go there to make your people happy. Don't play for yourself. Play for your audience. That'll entail you to being a good DJ. You'll always be hired if you're playing for your crowd and not for yourself. It's very easy once you become somebody to keep playing music that you like. But remember, people are not there to hear what you like, they're there to hear what they like. And it's for you to find that balance of what you like and they like to make a memorable experience for them.
It's about them. Absolutely.
It's about them.
Chico, thank you very, very much. This has been inspirational. Like I said, every time I meet you, I leave with something that I learn, and that's probably going to help me in my life. It is just wonderful to see your success. I've known you personally. I've seen the highs and lows, and you always stay true to yourself. You're always the most pleasant and wonderful person. Stay that way, and I hope we all get to hear you for many, many more years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.